up, fragrance community? Rise Frags 34 here. Another tag video. Again, I'm very happy that somebody tagged me. It means a lot. Fragrance Matt. It's kind of a new reviewer. It's been up probably for a few months now. Has a lot of fragrances, knows a bunch about them, and I'm enjoying his channel. So check him out. I'll leave a link below. But Fragrance Matt, thank you for the tag. I'm gonna try and do the best I can with this. So many memories come with fragrances, as we know. The way I look at a fragrance is just like a song. When you hear that song, you know exactly where you were, kind of what day it was. You know what I mean? So that fragrances are kind of like that as well. You're always going to have a certain smell, or if you walk past someone, or you kind of know the smell. You know what I mean? And it brings you back to some really cool memories. So, but starting off with the first memory I've had, obviously my father shaving, things like that, and of course, this was the only, that's all I've ever saw, my grandfather and my father kind of wear at the time. This is one of the very vintage aftershave Old Spices. And, he used to give me a little bit after I pretended to shave with the razor blade cover on and everything. So, but brings back a lot of memories. Of course, it doesn't smell that great, but again, compared to what we have now, but it's, it'll always bring back that little bit of a memory, and just seeing the bottle brings you back to maybe your father. Again, it's all going to depend on our ages and everything, but the guys my age, mid to high 30s and stuff, we're going to think of that when we think of like our dad and stuff, going back to that, era kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of go in motion with the years, so growing up, when I was real little, obviously Old Spice, think of my father and stuff, that's the memory there. Then basically getting into the eighth, well, actually, jazz probably would be, this is, fifth, sixth grade, maybe you would, you started to maybe wear a little bit. I remember I wore polo green. My father had the polo bottle, and I doused myself in it, and basically school almost made me go home. I reeked. So, and all the people were, all the kids were making fun of me and stuff. So that was a bad day, but I thought I was cool, because I wore my father's cologne. But polo green was kind of a bad memory in my, I like the fragrance, I think it's great, but it was just kind of a bad memory that day at school, because, a bunch of, fourth and fifth graders running around, smelling like that is, me smelling like that is probably not the, not the cool thing to do. So, but jazz reminds me of my brother so much. After that kind of that sixth, seventh grade, this is when we kind of started wearing fragrances a little bit, seventh grade, and kind of getting into, the girlfriends and things like that. And I'd always run into my brother's room, because he always kind of had, he wore a lot of Cool Water. That was kind of his signature scent. And then he got jazz, and I still to today love this one. This is again the vintage bottle, great fragrance. It's got a little bit of lavender in there. There's some crisp, it's crisp. It's still a little bit warm. I know I think it's got some like amber for the, in the dry down and stuff, but just a great fragrance. It totally reminds me of my brother. He, like I said, he wore Cool Water, jazz, a couple of those, I think Dracar, a lot of that from like 1987 to 1990 kind of fragrances, and those are, the YSL jazzes and the Dracars and things like that. So another memory, my great friend I grew up with, he wore Dracar. So we would douse ourselves in those if we were gonna, go hang out or whatever, So Dracar's another one. I don't have a bottle. I'd love to get a vintage bottle of that, but jazz really reminds me of my brother. I never had bottles of cologne, but he had them in his room. So, before I maybe, did something or whatever, I always, went in there and stole some of his jazz. So, but that's a very good one still till today. Then basically, I think I got, Nautica Competition was kind of my, I'm sorry, I'm going to get to Aspen. This one totally reminds me of my 8th grade girlfriend. I think my brother went into the service when I was in about 7th grade, so I kind of really wasn't wearing fragrance then. I didn't really have his to steal anymore, but as soon as I got into the 8th grade, I wasn't wearing fragrances. We would wear, obviously deodorant and things like that, but no fragrance. And then my girlfriend in 8th grade brought my attention to Aspen. And again, these are fragrances you could find in Kmart for $10, but back in 92, 93, this is good. It's still a great scent. I think it's great to today. It's just got that crispness. It's crisp to it. It's green. It smells awesome. I mean, I like Aspen. I like the smell of this. You know, I get compliments from it. And you don't smell, you don't hear a lot of people wearing this stuff anymore. But my 8th grade, girlfriend, sweetheart, I mean, she loved this on me, and this was actually my first fragrance bottle that I purchased. So, but I swear every time I smell this, I think of her, and it's just it's crazy how fragrances work, where it just reminds you of certain people or certain areas or that you've been in, or just certain times. So, but Aspen, still a good one, and it just brings back so many memories, because that's when you're in 8th, 9th grade and stuff, that you're a boy, you're kind of you're into the girls now, into that scene, and you're dating a little bit, and you want to smell good. So this was kind of that first one that came to me on that. Then basically I wore that for a little while. I kind of got out of it like in 9th grade a little bit, but then back in 10th grade I got Nautica Competition. Now this is the blue one. A little bit, I hear a lot better things on this one versus the yellow bottle. Still smells great. This kind of reminds, this was kind of in the years, I'm thinking 96, 97, maybe 97, I think it maybe came out. But I got this one, I was kind of later going on in my high school years with this one. And I kind of wore this for quite a while, some good memories with that in high school. Then basically I moved, and I moved to a new state and everything, and I think I was still wearing that. And then of course I met another girl, we kind of dated and stuff, and that's when she introduced me to this one, Acqua di Gio. Now this obviously reminds me of her, but it reminds me of so many things, because I just dated her for a short while, but she actually got me into this fragrance, which I know it was so popular, but what was kind of cool is a lot of people never wore it. People at my work never wore it. I used to go out constantly, 21, 22 years old, you're going to the bars, you're having fun, and I never really smelled it on anyone else too, which is crazy because it's the most popular fragrance I think anyone wore, but I got this bottle in about 2000, which is awesome because this is an actual 2000, from the year 2000 bottle. Michael Cure, thank you for this. He found this one, it's vintage, and this is the year. I mean, this is the year where I was, I was young, I was going to the bar, I was having my fun, and Acqua di Gio, so many compliments. I mean, girls would just come up to me and, oh, you smell so good. And what's crazy, it's just a aquatic that isn't that special, but, people loved it, and, that's when it was kind of still new and everything. But, and I wore this sucker for almost 12 years. This was, in my world too, a lot of you big time frag heads, you have 20 bottles in your collection, and even back in the day you guys did. In my family, in my world, we always just had one. If we picked one, Acqua di Gio, this is what I was going to wear. Every day I wore it, and that was just my scent. I never had, where I could choose, and I never, really knew that was, like I said, 2013 was kind of my really getting into fragrances, 2012, 2013. So before that, I just thought you had a scent that you wore, and that was it, but Acqua di Gio, awesome fragrance. Still to today, I love it. It smells good and brings back so many good memories. Girlfriends and my wife, and just perfect stuff with just good memories, and everyone seems to like it. It's not a it's a pleasing scent. Everyone really enjoys it. So and then after that, I got into the fragrance world. I ran out of my Acqua di Gio bottle, and I'm like, you know what, I got to try and do something different. And then, of course, the lovely YouTube world we live in, I went on there and I kind of did some stuff. And then, of course, Mark and, Al and a lot of the big time guys, were doing a lot of reviews on these fragrances. And I came across this guy. This is Dior Homme Intense. This is silver collar, 2010 bottle. I got this from Fragrance Net for like $100. So what happened was, this memory is this is kind of like my memory of just kind of getting into the fragrance game. I smell this sucker and it's just amazing. And why I got so fascinated with it, I didn't know fragrances were so, popular with people, and the business side of it too. I mean, this thing is bringing a lot of money now, but what happened was in 2000, or I'm sorry, when I purchased this on Fragrance Net in like 2013, the silver collar, that's like the vintage bottle, this was kind of going, they didn't have this anymore. And people were paying top dollar for this. Well, not a lot of people knew Fragrance Net had the 2010 bottles left. So there was 8 left, it says 8 available on eBay. I got all 8 of them. and I was kind of scared because I didn't know what I was going to get. But every single one was the OT02 or whatever the 2010 version was, and they were all silver collar. So I'm like, yes, you know. And again, I'm not trying to be a businessman and make a bunch of money on this stuff and all that, but it was kind of interesting to me because I was just getting into fragrances really heavy then. And you know, I put my first one on eBay just to see what it would do. Silver collar, I labeled it right and everything, and it got $290. So I took 6 of my bottles. I kept 2, and I took 6 of them and I sold them, and I made a really good profit, you know. And I wasn't trying to hurt anyone or, you know, just be a business aspect of it. But again, that fascinated me how much, you know, it's cool with vintage, and, you know, the older version has a little more iris in it, and the newer one has more pear, and, you know, all these things were kind of going on. And this was actually my first review. You know, was Dior Homme Intense, and I haven't gone back and watched them. Probably terrible at what I've said on it, but you know, so that reminds me of kind of just getting into this fragrance world and really enjoying it a lot more than I used to. And you know, I just kind of took it for granted before. You just had a regular signature scent and that was it. You know, now there's so much to choose from, and it's so much fun, and I'm getting into it. But Dior Homme Intense, what a great fragrance! I just love the whole blend with this is amazing. So, but that's that, and then kind of my last guy, just the memory of just saying, what the hell did I just do, spending over $600, you know, for a bottle of fragrance? And that's this bad boy right here, and I love it. And it's Amber Oud by Raja Dove, and this kind of really just, you know, I feel still kind of like a king when I wear it, and you know, nobody wears it, you know, and I don't know anyone in my little world that would wear something like this. And the blend is amazing. You get the oud in there, but it's wearable and just absolutely amazing. So when I think Raja, I think Amber Oud. I think this is kind of the real, you know, first real crazy expensive fragrance that I purchased, you know. And I felt so good when I got it, you know. I thought it was just, you know, like, wow, you know, you look at it, it's just like a piece of gold in your hand, you know what I mean? So brings back a lot of memories too of just not crazy memories, but what I'm saying is when I wear it, I just feel so good, and you know, it's like, wow, you just know it's a Raja, just the smooth and the quality of it. So Amber Oud, you know, again, not too crazy memories about a lot of these fragrances. There's so many more that, you know, I could kind of get into, but you know, I wanted to kind of bring up the childhood part of it, you know, with the Old Spice with my father and the jazz with my brother. And you know, a lot of time, you know, we always refer to when we were kids, you know, uncles wearing something, or your fathers or your brothers, or you know, things like that, and you know, what got the girls, and you know, or whatever. So a lot of these. And another one from my father, you know, he wore Javon Musk. I don't know if he still does or not, but he wore that for years and years. So I mean, if I smell Javon Musk, like the older stuff, I think of Dad right away, you know. So, and I know you guys, you know, like I said, smelling these fragrances and all this, they bring back so many memories, and you kind of, you know, you think of exactly where you were that day when you smelled it. Or even on, you know, girls too, like, you know, a couple girlfriends that I had, like I think the Candies one or something, that, you know, that was a girlfriend that I had. So a lot of times you just have, you know, and they can be good or bad memories, you know, the whole Polo Green experience in, you know, the 6th grade. I shouldn't have doused myself in that and showered myself with it, and because I, you know, was kind of made fun of. But again, you'll never forget that stuff, and they're memories, you know. So I'm probably going to do another video about this too, because I want to kind of get more into depth with some of the cool memories, and there is a lot more memories with these. But, and even now, like with Aventus and things like that. So I'm sure as the years go on, you know, this video we can tag each other all day long every year with some cool memories, you know, with some good stories and stuff. So, but sorry for rambling on too much. I wanted to kind of go through some of my old stuff that, you know, it really reminds me of getting you know, into the whole fragrance thing. And now I can finally say, like, oh my God, it's right, my brother wore jazz. It's, you know, now I can get that, and you know, I can hunt for the vintage stuff. And you know, it's just like I said, this passion we have is pretty cool. You know, the fragrance world is awesome, and it's you know, it's sometimes a good investment too. You know, sometimes something it discontinues, it goes up crazy price. You know, it's like you have something. You know, I don't drink, I don't smoke. You know, I don't get into anything crazy, and this is kind of my world that I really love, you know. So this is kind of what I, you know, spend my money on. So, but thank you guys so much, Fragrance Matt. Thanks for the tag. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, there's probably a lot of things I'm missing here with some stories and stuff I'd love to tell you, but we'll save that for another video. But I'd love to hear your stories on these. Again, you know, fragrance reviewers out there, tag. I would love to tag so many of you guys, but again, you know, I'm gonna